Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Kate Adams, Chief Growth Officer at Burkland Associates. Their mission is to provide startups with expert finance, accounting, tax, and HR services so they can grow confidently. Known for fractional CFO support, bookkeeping, and financial guidance, Burkland prides itself on being a trusted partner to emerging businesses. Now, Kate brings over 20 years of marketing expertise, having built high-impact strategies at companies like Franklin Resources, Visa, and UBM. She's also the host of the Startup Success podcast and editor of the Smarter Startup blog, where she shares insights on lead generation and growth. Under her leadership, Burkland has helped countless startups gain the structure and stability they need to thrive. She and her team have been recognized for delivering crucial guidance to companies at every stage. Kate holds a BS in Business Marketing, graduating magna cum laude from the University of San Francisco. She frequently speaks at industry events, offering valuable advice on partnerships and strategic marketing. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, the CRO of Burkland Associates, Kate Adams. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the really kind introduction.
It's my pleasure.
Thorough, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Kate, what first drew you into the field of marketing and business development? How did you get drawn to that?
I knew that I wanted to do something in business, so I pursued that as a major, and I took those intro courses very seriously, which I would, advise anyone to do. And although I enjoyed numbers, I found that I really had a passion in the marketing and sales classes. And so that's kind of where I started to tailor internships in the summer and then where I wanted to go.
And you started out with some positions at pretty large companies like Franklin Templeton. I'm curious how those experiences working at larger companies have helped you in roles with more modestly sized companies now.
That's a great question. I think where you can gain a lot from working with big companies or for big companies is you learn a lot of best practices. There's a lot of mentors you can find within the organization. I mean, when I was at Franklin and Visa, a lot of the people I was working with were incredible, right? Like marketers and business development folks, some of the best at the time. And so just being in the office with them, learning from them, seeing how they dealt with challenges and how they put together strategies, I think it gave me a great foundation and kind of the tools that I needed when I went to startups and smaller companies and had to build it all from scratch.
So it kind of taught you a good framework that you could take and then build on and adapt for some of the smaller companies that you worked with afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so how did the opportunity at Burkland come along?
Someone in the industry mentioned it to me. I had just been with a company. So after being with these large organizations for a while, then I wanted to change and be in small organizations where you do a lot and you have your hands in a lot of things and you're
probably more control too.
Right. And creating from the ground up. So I had been with a company that our whole goal was to be acquired. The founder said to me when they hired me, that's why we brought you on. We want to be acquired. And we did have a successful acquisition. And so I didn't want to stay on with the company that bought us because it would be going back to another large company where everyone has their defined role. I found I really loved building things. And someone just in the industry, word of mouth, said to me, this company, Burkland Associates, is looking to build out a marketing strategy. They kind of have a dumpy website. They haven't done it much around marketing. That's the kind of challenge I love.
So
Good
open the
talking.
door, and
Yeah,
here you are today. And
exactly.
so, okay, now let's hear about what Burkland does.
Okay, so Burkland, basically, we provide fractional services for startups. So that's why it's so fun. We're working with startups that are some of the most innovative companies in the world right now: AI startups, fintech, SaaS. And we provide fractional support for them. So CFOs, accountants, tax advisors, and HR folks. Because when you're scaling and in the early days of a startup, you don't want to hire a full time CFO or a full time bookkeeping team or recruiter. So they can use our services on a fractional basis and pay for what they need, which makes a lot of sense. Now, I don't advise clients directly. Like, I'm not a CFO, I'm not an HR person. What I do at Burkland is, when I started, they only had one channel to get leads, and that was business development. And since then, I've built out a marketing channel to drive leads, a partnerships channel, and built out more of their business development function. So now we have a big growth engine. So I started VP of marketing. That's why I'm now chief growth officer, because I'm running the whole growth engine. And, later this year, we're going to be getting into new markets. So that's my responsibility in what we do.
Interesting. So, tell me a little bit more about the services that you guys provide. You say fractional. You got fractional CFOs. Is there, outside of the finance bucket, are there services that you're offering to your clients?
I mean, finance is where we started. We started with CFOs, then we added bookkeeping and accounting. So they're, running the books for startups. We have FP&A, they do modeling and help with pricing. We have controllers. We have tax advisors who help startups get R&D tax credits and, payroll taxes. There's a lot of tax considerations. And then we have HR people that can help with, payroll, recruiting, writing your employee handbook. So pretty much all the back office functions that a startup needs, from like seed stage through Series B, we provide on a fractional basis. And we love it when our clients fire us, because that means they've done well enough that they can hire their own people. Because unfortunately, we do have a lot of clients who fold, because startups do fold. So it's such a win when we get fired.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And so, any particular reason why startups are the focus? Is it because once you get past that startup phase, you're more likely to build your own internal team? And okay, and I see you nodding your head. So then, what is kind of the ideal company size, whether it's in terms of employees or revenue amount, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we only work with startups that are venture backed. So there's a lot of startups in the country, but honestly, if they don't have venture backing or some kind of funding, they're not going to be able to afford our services, and they probably don't need our services yet, right? If it's still three people in a garage working on an idea, a prototype, you don't need a fractional CFO and an HR team. So once you get venture backing or some kind of funding, that's when we come into place. And our sweet spot is seed stage. So that's seed fundraising round through about Series B, Series C. I mean, by the time you're raising a Series B, Series C, you're going to have a lot of these areas: finance, tax, HR. You're going to have your own team at that point.
And I'm curious to, as much as you can say, hear more about the different marketing channels that you built out. There was some business development. Now you're doing some more marketing. You've built out the business development a little bit more. I'm not sure what that means. And then you also got some other marketing initiatives going on. What can you share with us?
Sure. So when I joined Burkland, they drove most of their growth, and it's a great strategy by building a business development team that outreached to venture capitalists. And the thought is build these relationships with VCs. And when they make an investment in a startup and their startup needs a CFO or an accountant, they'll recommend Burkland because there's a relationship there. So it's an excellent strategy and it was working really well when I joined, but it's expensive.
Mm.
You're taking VCs to lunch, you're going to conferences, Warriors games, concerts. It's not cheap. So when I came on board, we built a website that could drive leads. And what we did was we built a content engine, which I highly recommend for anyone in the professional services industry. So we created a blog, a podcast, and toolkits. All that content showed prospective startup founders that we were experts in what we were doing, but it also drives leads. That's what Google is built on now, search. So when you put in, I need a fractional CFO for my startup, or I need HR help or tax help, we come up to the top of the page for free because of all of the content that we have out there. That's the play. So we started driving leads and business through our marketing website channel, which is a much more cost-effective way to drive leads. So that's been a huge way for us to grow over the past 5 years. And it was so fun for me to build that first website, to work with the team and build the blog and the podcast and all the toolkits that we've done. And then as I'd been with the company for a few years, I started to see we were getting all these partnership requests from service providers in the industry, and they wanted to partner with us and drive leads together. And so I didn't have time to manage it. So I went to our founder, Jeff, and convinced him that this could be another channel for us. And we hired someone that reports to me who manages partnerships. And her role is to work with these partners, develop content together, develop events together, and drive leads. So now I'm, managing marketing partnerships. And then we decided we were going to fine tune our business development more and try to make it more cost effective and based on relationships instead of just events and whatnot. So I started managing business development too. And I have a team of people, and we're working on creative ways to partner with these VCs that are more cost effective. So those are our three channels, and it's been an absolute blast to build all of them. And I'm so appreciative of my team. I got to hire and bring on people that I used to work with, and in various capacities, and it's been really fun.
I'm kind of curious if maybe you can teach me as well as our listeners a little bit more about some of these strategies. You're really big on the content engine, the podcast, the blog, search engine optimization. So you're getting ranked in Google. You obviously have the benefit of having worked for some really large companies. You kind of learned the framework and the way to go about that. For folks who, may not have that kind of expertise, how would you recommend somebody else get started with that?
That's a great question. So I would tell them whatever area they're in, whether it's auto mechanic or, a florist shop or anything, professional coach, kind of think about what differentiates you. And if you start producing content, like maybe you fix up old BMWs and you write, doesn't have to be anything fancy, once a week about a car that you fixed up, a BMW, or you showcase once a week some floral designs or a professional story from coaching, and you start like a blog. What's going to happen is you can pay for ads on Google, and it's a great strategy and it works, but they're very expensive. And if you have competitors in the field that are highly funded and have a lot of money, chances are they're going to win, in that area. So your content, because if you put this good content on Google consistently that is not AI written, you actually have to write it because the Google algorithm,
What?
I know, is they're always making improvements and they figured out, AI content, but real content, you're going to start to rank higher when somebody searches for the product or service that you're selling. And it gives you a chance to compete with some of these giants in your space that have a lot of money on Google Ads.
Say more about the partnership approach that you guys are using. Is it kind of simply a matter of, there are, give me an idea, like who would be somebody complementary to you that you would form a partnership with?
Yes, great question. So here's one that's in the news a lot, Ramp. So Ramp is a great tool. It's a business card. It's like a corporate card for small businesses. And it has a lot on the back end that helps companies like sort expenses and process them and whatnot. So Ramp is interested in startups as well. They want startups to use their corporate card. So Ramp is a great partner to Burkland. We've put together content, joint content that's helpful to startup founders, events that startup founders want to attend together. And then we're both leveraging our resources and reaching a customer that we both want, but we want the customer in different ways. So maybe, getting back to that florist shop, like a dirt company, right? And so I don't know, or not like a landscaping company, you partner with a dirt company. You get what I'm saying? You both want that customer, but
Right.
you want them for different reasons.
Right. And so is it always the two of you going after new customers together, or is there ever them coming in and saying, hey, do you have any customers that want access to this? Maybe there's a referral fee, or vice versa. Like maybe Ramp has some folks that would be, a great fit for what Burkland does.
Absolutely. That's a whole nother facet to it, is that you can do referral fees and whatnot, because when you first start working with the partner, you have all these customers already that they want. So maybe in our email newsletter, we will include offers from our partners. And so our email newsletter is widely read because it has all of our content in it. And then our partner gets to run something at the bottom of it like, hey, we're offering all Burkland clients 30% off, reach out to us. And then in exchange, they put us in their newsletter, and then we do referrals and whatnot. Absolutely. It's a huge part of it.
Now, as I understand, Kate, you've kind of got a little bit of a different thought process on this. For most companies, marketing and operations are rather distinct and separate functions. But you believe in uniting these to achieve more kind of exponential growth. Do I have that right? Can you give an example of that?
What do you mean by operations? Like, what do you mean? Like,
you know what? We're going to go ahead and cut this question out, Kate, because I think maybe my research team gave me some bad info there. Because as I got the look on your face, I could see like, nope, that is not part of your playbook.
Is that me?
So, Kate, you're the host of Startup Success Podcast. I'm curious if there's a particular interview that has influenced how maybe you go about the way that you drive growth and revenue to Burkland. Is there, a guest that you had on that had a big impact on you?
We have had some guests on that have talked about marketing and PR, and they do delve into some strategies, like fundamental strategies that I think are super helpful. I think where I get the most from my show is I'm talking a lot of time to startup founders on my show, and those are our potential customers. So it's almost like every time I do an interview, it's like a mini focus group where I'm hearing from a customer I want, like what their needs are, where their pain points are. And I just learned so much about our space from our show. almost feel bad because we're giving a lot of great content out there that's helpful, but I'm learning a lot too. And we
It's a
also,
win-win. What's
yeah, it's
better
a
than
huge
that?
win. And sometimes I interview VC investors, and that's super interesting because we're trying to build relationships with them. And so I kind of, learn about what's making them tick, what they're worried about. So the market intel I get from the show is pretty fantastic.
That's great. And I'm assuming that folks can find your podcast on all the major platforms, Spotify,
Yes,
Apple, et
Apple and
cetera.
Spotify. We launch a new show every other Tuesday, and they're quick. They're 25, 30 minutes because our audience is startup founders, and we cover a lot of great topics. Thank you for asking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fresh perspectives, empathy, core to Burkland's values. Why
Yeah.
specifically these two?
What's so great about Burkland with core values and fresh perspectives and empathy is I've worked for a lot of companies that have had core values. But I will say one of the things about Burkland that I noticed right when I started working there is in our executive team, the founder, when we have a big decision, he will actually reference our core values and we will use it to guide decision making. And I think empathy is an important one because we're working with startups and it's a grind for the people that work at a startup, right? I mean, for all those entrepreneurs listening, there's mental health challenges. It can be lonely, it can be scary, worrisome, stressful. So we want to have a lot of empathy for what our clients are going through and what they're faced with raising money and cash runway and whatnot. And then fresh perspectives is, we're working with all these innovative companies that are changing the world. We have to keep an open mind as well. So we've embraced areas of AI, right? We try to be very open minded on new technologies and systems and bring a fresh perspective to problems because we're working with such innovative people. We really have to be. So, those are core values we really live by as an executive team. And it's one of the reasons why I like working at Burkland is we have these, values that we follow and all align on.
You mentioned earlier that you guys are going to be heading into some new markets soon. Is that new industries, new geographies? What does that mean exactly?
That's a great question. I can't go too deep into it because competitors, but I will say it's new markets. So I'm super excited about it. And so is my team because anyone who's in marketing and biz dev sales, any kind of new challenge, new market, right? You're so fired up for. And I'm just really excited. We're going to be building some things from scratch and it's going to be really fun. I've got some new people on my team who've never done this work before, and I'm excited for them to get to do this.
When can we reconnect to hear more about this?
Great question. We can reconnect after the summer. And I'd love to share, with your listeners how we did it because we're really going to go from the basics and build something from scratch over the next few months. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I am just loving the mystery of all this right now. Whether intentional or not, well done. You've got me hooked and making notes in my calendar for this.
Perfect.
How about a book or a podcast that's not your own that you might recommend to folks that's been particularly helpful for you as a marketer, as a salesperson, a chief revenue officer?
Yeah, I mean, for books, I read a lot of fiction and historical fiction because it's like an escape. I read a ton of industry newsletters, so that's kind of how I keep current. But with a podcast that I would recommend, when I'm listening to a podcast, I kind of like to take a step away from the industry and work on my personal growth and development. So I really like Jay Shetty, On Purpose. I don't know if you've ever heard him, but
I haven't. What is it about?
he's fantastic. It's just about being a better version of yourself and also tips and tricks, to better organize your mind and utilize your day and whatnot. He has a lot of great guests on there. He's a really good interviewer. He's fantastic. So that would be my number one recommendation, Jay Shetty on Purpose.
So along those lines, Kate, do you have any particular daily habits, rituals that help get you started, keep you on track?
I work out every day. So for me, exercise is super important. Like, clears my head, helps me sleep better. Some of my best ideas are on hikes, walks, runs. That's why I'm not always listening to things, because it's like time for my brain. So for me, exercising is the number one. I have tried to add meditation to my routine so much. So now I'm doing 3 minutes of mindfulness every morning, because it's a tip I got on Jay Shetty's show, which is just start with 3 minutes, some breathing in the morning. Someday I'm going to tackle this meditation. So we'll see. It's tough.
Oh, it is tough. I've gone through different cycles in my life where I am all in on it. And when I'm all in on it, I'm also incredibly frustrated by it. And then there are times I get benefits from it, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, I kind of found a groove. And I think about it sort of like exercise, right? Like, I used to get really upset when I was in a meditative session and I couldn't control my thoughts, just keep going here and
Right.
here. And I'm like, I'm not. And then somebody kind of framed it for me in terms of like physical working out. They're like, think about every time that your attention drifts and you bring it back, it's like doing a repetition. It's like doing a curl, a bench press, a squat,
Okay.
whatever. And it's like, rather than being angry at that moment, it's an opportunity for you to notice it and that's just a repetition, another repetition,
like that.
Strengthening your mind. Yeah.
That's
Maybe that'll
helpful.
help. Yeah, maybe that'll help. Let me know.
Yeah, I will. Yes, I'm going to bring it back. After we launch this thing, I'm going to try again. So.
Fair enough. How about a serious challenge, Kate, that you have gone through? Maybe it's personal or professional. Maybe the two of them sort of mixing together. I don't know. What was it? How did you get through it? And what did you learn coming out the other side?
I mean, if I start with a business one, and I'm happy to share a personal one too, but I think a business one would be, I'm older, and this might be something that will be relevant, but in the future here, we went through a really bad recession, the .com burst in San Francisco. And
2001.
Yeah, right. And I had to lay people off. My boss was laid off, lots of restructuring. I was at United Business Media, saw a lot of products that we all worked on and were super proud of fail. And it was just a scary time personally, because, you're worried about yourself financially, but also laying people off, trying to keep the team optimistic that we're there. I was younger. I hadn't gone through one before. I made some mistakes that, if I could share, I think I would have done a better job laying people off. I let HR kind of dictate how it was going to go, and they kind of ran the way we did it with my team. And I think if I could do it again, I would want to take the lead and I have had to lay off people since then, just on a smaller scale. I take the lead and HR is kind of the help, right? Instead of the way I did it. I think I was too scared to do it that way as a young leader, right? I'd never fired people before.
And if for folks who haven't done it before, it is one of the hardest things in life to do.
It is. I was nervous about it and scared and in my 30s, and I hid behind HR, and it was a really unpredictable time in the world. And yeah, I would say, I've learned as a leader, I have to have empathy. I have to show up. I have to really be all in on laying people off and, being a manager for them and a leader for them all the way through it. And just, I would say for recessions and downturns, you just have to like double down on what you know, trust your instincts, and we will come out of it.
When you were going through that back in the early 2000s, was there a support system for you? Was there a mentor that helped you through it? Like, I mean, that is an incredible amount of stress to have to go to people that you're close with, that you've worked with, that have been part of your team, and say, I'm sorry, you no longer have a paycheck.
Yes, I wish I had a mentor at the time. I didn't. I had three colleagues that were doing the same thing in different areas. So we would go to lunch a lot and happy hour and just kind of commiserate and talk through it. But back then, there wasn't a lot of resources. There weren't leadership coaches. There weren't formal mentors as much. But I would say having colleagues, that's one thing I tell people, that when you're going through something, whether it be starting a company or cancer or whatever, if you find other people that are going through it, find a network of shared experiences, it really helps.
I think this is kind of an underrated aspect of personal and professional development, being able to find like-minded folks who are in similar positions, even if maybe they're in a little bit different industries, to be able to compare notes. And like you said, when you were going through the economic downturn in 2001, the colleagues that you could just sort of lean on and commiserate with. Mm-hmm. Do you still have like networks like this today that are a part of your life?
I use them for everything. Okay, I'll share this. This is a personal challenge. Very freaky, funky story, but I was taking a free yoga class in Hawaii, and the instructor yanked my neck trying to get me in position. And then I flew back. It hurt, but I held the position, whatever. I flew back to the United States, 6-hour flight. Well, she had torn my carotid artery. And then I ended up having a minor TIA stroke at the age of, I was in my 40s. So super weird accident, but they happen. It's, and I obviously am so lucky, had a full recovery, everything. My arteries healed now. But I immediately got onto Facebook, which I don't really use, and found a carotid artery dissection support group and just immersed myself into it and learned more about what had happened to me than the doctors and the ER or whatever, and got so many resources and talked to people and got through tough nights. So I tell people that's how you get through things.
Is other people who were going through similar things.
Right.
And who knew that there was this niche of torn carotid arteries? When you say that, I'm thinking, how do you not bleed out?
So your artery is torn, and what happens is a clot forms, a blood clot forms at the artery to prevent you from, and then that clot gets loose. And that's when you suffer a minor. And in some cases, some people die. They suffer a massive stroke and die. I'm so lucky I had a minor one. My 16-year-old son found me, called 911.
Found you like collapsed, passed out unconscious?
No, I was in the kitchen making breakfast and I started slurring my speech. My face dropped and acting weird. He took a picture, called his dad. They called 911. Yeah. I mean, he saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so were there any symptoms prior to the actual stroke event?
Yes. I had horrific headaches. My neck was killing me, and this thumping in my ear, which was my heartbeat, because my artery was torn. You could hear it just, So now when you put all the symptoms together, any doctor would be like, oh, she tore her artery. But at the time, I called my doctor. They're like, oh, probably migraines. I had an appointment in 2 weeks to see him. You know how medicine is these days. So Anyway, PSA for anyone listening, take those symptoms all come together as a warning. Yes.
Wild. A year from now, Kate, you're celebrating. What are you celebrating?
Gosh, a year from now. Selfishly, I have 3 kids. My youngest will be 16 and he'll have his driver's license. I love
no
him
more chauffeuring for you.
Yes, but I'm so tired of driving him around. I love him, but yeah, we live in an area where we have to drive. Also, I'll be celebrating, that's personal, this launch. I'm super excited about this. I am hoping we're, kicking butt with it. Yeah.
And what is it again?
Very good.
I had to try. We'll have you back on, though, I promise. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Just one more question for you, Kate. But before we get there, I want to do 2 things.
Okay.
First of all, for everybody listening today, I'll invite you to hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app so you can continue to get more great content like we've had here today with Kate Adams at Burkland Associates. Kate, I also want to let people know the best way either to get in touch with you directly or to continue to follow your story or that of Burkland. What would that be?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, so feel free to hit me up. I don't know if I'm going to regret that, but I do love giving advice to, young people that want to do stuff in marketing and whatnot and internships and whatnot. I think LinkedIn's probably the best. And then Burkland Associates and the podcast is Startup Success.
And we'll include links to all of those things in our show notes for everybody. Absolutely. Okay, so last question for you. As you look to the future, what exciting changes do you see coming to your industry in the next few years?
I think AI, I know it's talked about a lot, but it's a big one. There's a lot of innovation around it. There's some things that make me nervous, but there's also some things that are super exciting that are going to happen because of it. I think there'll be advancements in diagnosing and treating diseases, like even more breakthroughs around cancer and Alzheimer's and MS. We see a lot of really exciting startups that are just going to help streamline medical care and whatnot. If you think about your doctor's office, it's very old school still, right? There's so much that can be done there. And I talk to a lot of people in that space. And I think, some of these diseases and things that killed our grandparents and our parents, they're not going to anymore. And that's so exciting.
It is exciting. And it didn't even register with me. You guys have got a front row seat to a lot of this because a lot of these folks are your clients that are coming up with all these new applications for AI.
Exactly. It's pretty exciting. When you get down, you can think about some of these startups and what these founders are doing. I had a young founder that we work with share a story where he creates this thing that's coming to 911, where 911 can go on your iPhone video camera, and then they can walk people through CPR and whatnot using the camera. They're saving lives. It's pretty cool what some of these young entrepreneurs are doing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Gosh, we could do just a series of episodes on what some of your clients are up to.
I know. Seriously.
That's fun.
Yeah. It is
fun. Kate Adams, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.